But you know what I found very interesting, because I at this point I realized, like, I mean, I was just listening to you describe Singapore, and let's call
Right.
that to be an attempt to make a unified theory of Singapore, or of the continuation
Right.
of the right. And you use
Sure.
some terms. You used nerd, you used ambitious, and those are both terms you've sort of used to describe, in some sense, yourself when you wrote the book
Yeah.
Friendly Ambitious Nerd, right? And I'm
Yeah.
wondering if there is some sort of a parallel in the unified theory of Visa and the unified theory
Yeah.
of Singapore.
There is. It's I mean, and so I would say that Friendly Ambitious Nerd is my unified theory of human excellence.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so again, like you can go and if one of
Solid.
my right. So one of
Right.
my things is just when, and one of the, it's slightly crazy, slightly terrifying, slightly exciting, is to look at history and realize that it's not. Some people think history used to be shit and then it slowly gets better, slowly gets better. It's not
Right.
like that. It's like it's crazy wild up and downs. And sometimes cities have like a golden age where for 200 years they flourish like crazy. There's a ton of art. There's like scientific advancement. There's music, culture. In India's golden age, they invent zero, right? They invent, and in Baghdad's golden age, they invent chemistry. They really, the human species has been advanced in such. It's not really a slow, steady thing
It's
all the
not
way. They're like,
gradual. It's not
yeah,
gradual. It's called punctuated equilibria, right? Like
exactly,
yeah,
right.
right.
It's super spiky, and like it's amazing how much greatness in the world. Like, so I'm careful not to fall into the trap of like doing like a great man theory kind of thing where, one person is responsible for everything.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, when you study it, you'll always find that anytime you see someone described as a great man, like whether it's Steve Jobs, Leonardo da Vinci, like Lee Kuan Yew, whoever it is that people say, this one person did amazing things, you will find that they had like a team around them or like a scene around them where, so Steve Jobs used to go to the Homebrew Computing Club. And the Homebrew Computing Club even was like 10 years after, I think, the Manhattan Project. And, there's this context where extremely talented people were working on very difficult problems in roughly the same area, and then they all converge and they socialize, and on the weekends or whatever, for fun, they showed off their computers to each other. And now we have iPhones, right? And same in Japan after World War II, there were like people who were doing radio repairs and then whatnot, and like a bunch of nerds got together, they formed Sony, and then they have have the Walkman, the PlayStation. Like, it's amazing how so much human and that's like sciencey product stuff. There's the same thing in music and culture. You look at the history of jazz, it's like 50 people. It's a very small group of people who incubate something that the whole world can then enjoy. And once I became aware of this, like, I'm wondering, why am I not in one right now? Like, and if I'm not, how do I make it happen? How do I be embedded in a scene of 50 to 100 people who are making the future, who are making things that are amazing? You can look it up. It's like, when Tolkien was writing Lord of the Rings, he was friends with C.S. Lewis, and who was writing, Narnia. Like, it always, like, once you go looking for it, you realize greatness never happens by itself. It's always people trying to one up each other and impress each other. And so what that means is that if you can find ambitious people, and very often people, they start out ambitious, and if they try to do whatever it is they want to do, and if there's no feedback from the world, there's no response, then they give up, because it's like, what's the point of doing the thing if no one appreciates my work? So you need at least one other person who appreciates the work. And whether it's physics and people are trying to split the atom, or I think like poets trying to reinvent poetry in England. Like, it always boils down to a small group of people trying to impress each other. And they are nerdy. When I say they're nerdy, I mean that they care very much about the specifics of what is possible, and they're curious about something. They pursue their curiosity to figure out, why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? What if we tried something else? And then they're ambitious in that they want, they don't just want to know, like, oh, I guess you can, like, so with painters or whatever, they're like, or sculptors, like, how far can we push marble? And then they're like, how do we, can we make something? I mean, there's a whole ecosystem. So you need the investors, the patrons, whatever. But like, people all coming together to create this culture of, let's build the most beautiful and amazing buildings that will last for centuries, that, our great-great-grandchildren will be like, how did they do that? That's amazing. I don't understand. Like they want to do that. And to do that, you have to collaborate with other people, so you have to be friendly. So that's that kind of that trinity. If you have all of that and you interface with other people like that, then like the even the casual conversations you have with each other will push each other to be more ambitious, to try bigger things. And I feel like one of my core theses is that the internet allows this, and people don't seem to realize just how much it enables it. Mm-hmm. And the analogy I use is that, the electric guitar was invented in about 1930. Mm-hmm. What they did was they basically wanted the acoustic guitar to be able to play to a larger audience. And so they wanted to amplify it. And so they put a pickup, and then it makes a louder sound. And for like 20 years, 25 years, electric guitars were played exactly like acoustic guitars. It's just the same simple chords and whatever. And then, in 30 years after the invention of the acoustic guitar came Jimi Hendrix. And Hendrix freaking pushed it to its limit. He turned up the overdrive, he pressed the wah-wah. He made it seem like an alien instrument.
Yeah. He even used the feedback. He used the feedback to make the sound, right?
Exactly. So the crazy thing is, everything that Hendrix did, there was no reason why it couldn't have been done in 1933 or 34. But it took 30 years for someone to try something new with that crazy new device that just previously everyone was using it to copy what was being done before. And he was the first guy, or one of the first few guys, and the one who succeeded, and asking, what can we do with this that nobody was doing before? Right. And I feel like something similar is true for the internet and for social media. It's kind of my grand hype. I mean, I don't want to say grand, but it's a belief I have that most people don't seem to share. It's kind of scary. I could be wrong. Like statistically, probabilistically, I'm most likely wrong. Mm-hmm. But if I'm right, the payoff on that is so massive that I have to do it. I have to, even if there's like a 1% chance that I'm right, I have to take it, because if it works out, we'll have a new golden age of humanity.
What is this? No, I get that. And that's fine. When you paint a dream, I don't expect anybody to be practical. But I'm very curious as to what it is. What is this? What is it that you're trying to accomplish?
Right. So think about every great mind throughout human history. Think about, Benjamin Franklin and Voltaire, and people who were communicating with each other, mostly at the time by letters. Mm-hmm. And how slow that mode of communication was. They had to wait days to get a response, and they would write letters. It just that, the rate at which humanity can advance is kind of dependent on the quality of conversations that high level players are having. So golden ages happen when you have a high concentration of very smart people, of whether it's scientists, philosophers, musicians, and they're all concentrated in one place. And they're challenging each other. And so far in history, that has almost been an accident of history, or, like people wouldn't even have known. The information could not spread that, it could be that you live in Milan and you're a pretty good painter, but you just don't know that in Florence, there's a freaking renaissance happening, where if you had gone to Florence, you would be hanging out with all these other painters, and you would have been on the same level as Da Vinci, maybe. But you might not have known, because no one's talking about it around you. You just, by accident, by luck, or, that didn't happen.
Right.
But now we have the opportunity, we have the greatest communication devices in the history of humanity. But and again, when I talk to people about this, they're like, oh, but don't we have TED and Reddit and Quora, and there are all these channels. But my experience on these channels is that very few people ever give their maximum effort, because they don't think it will be appreciated. Because if you put in the effort to really do something substantial, most of the audience is passers-by and just random people. They're not going to really appreciate the work that you put in. And so a lot of people don't even try. And so what's happening is there are a bunch of geniuses, I believe. And when I say genius, I don't mean that people are born geniuses. I think people are born with potential, and then the genius has to be hammered. It's like a sword. You have to make it happen. And like all these potential geniuses are kind of goofing off because they don't they can't identify each other. They don't see, they look around and they see other people who are also goofing off. So everyone's just goofing off. And they don't realize that, if 10 of us come together, we can change the world. Like it's still true. It was true when, Steve Jobs and friends did it to make Apple.
Right.
And it's true and found Facebook. That has not changed. That remains true every day. And it feels a bit silly to say it at maybe like 21-year-old guys, 20-year-old guys, they say it to sound cool over beer or whatever. But then they get a job and then they reach 25, 26, they need to get married, they have bills to pay, and then they're like, I don't have time for this shit. I'm gonna play video games or go to the bar or whatever. Like they lose their idealism too early. But like if you commit to like 50 years, like the output that you do and if you look at anybody truly great, like all the great painters and stuff, they have like a life's work that it could be that for the first 30 years you're mediocre, and then like in the last 50 years you're
it's likely that would be the case, right?
But most people don't make it through the early stages, and so they think they can't dance, they think they can't write, they can't paint, whatever. It's super tragic. School disincentivizes this, which is crazy. So if you look back, so many of the geniuses, they almost fall through the cracks. Like Da Vinci was like self-directed and yeah, anyway.
So I have a sharper question to ask with respect to that. And my question is, when you said the payoff, because probabilistically I might be wrong, but if I'm not, the payoff is extremely high. I'm trying to understand what is this marginal competitive factoid that you figured out. And I mean, I'm trying to get at what we had spoken about earlier. I think you take Twitter, and Twitter particularly, but the internet as a whole, seriously in a way. And then therefore Twitter takes you seriously in a way that is extremely novel. And what I think that is, I mean, I take Twitter more seriously because I follow you, not because your views are like it's
excellent.
no, not because you were doing this very weird kind of a meta-aware tweeting where it's like you were sort of like it's kind of like a stream of consciousness. I don't really know what to describe it. But right now, to me, when somebody's like, dude, why are you on Twitter? It's such a shit show. I'm like, you just haven't explored Twitter properly. I have this guy I know, his name's Visa. You should check him out. Reading what he's written is this halfway point between a diary entry and a text message to a friend. And it's so meta-aware that it's not even hardcore. So his opinions are more like, I'm more happy to incorporate his. I'm not sure how to describe you. Right? I'm not sure how to describe this phenomena. How would you do that?
How would I describe myself? Yeah. So again, I was mentioning like, Ben Franklin and so on. So those guys are my heroes. I feel like, and I say guys because at the time women didn't have much. It's not that. So, right now my contemporary heroes, there are a lot of women as well. But like, so the point is that like intellectuals who had friends that they could discuss philosophy with, discuss economics, science, whatever, they were advancing the state of human, just the light of human consciousness. They were pushing it forward. And they did it by talking to their friends, basically, right? And then they published books and treatises and, but like before, and you see all those philosophers, they wrote like these thick books about on reason, or
like, right.
Like what? Who would sit down and write a book called On Reason for fun? It's not. It's because they were having conversations in the coffee shops with their friends, and they were arguing with each other, and they're like, you know what? I'm gonna show you.
I'm gonna one up you.
And then they go and write that. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take that spirit of what I saw those guys doing hundreds of years, thousands of years ago even, and I'm trying to do it publicly, assuming that if I do it, other people who are looking for that will see it eventually, and they have at this point, and then they will reciprocate, and then we can start playing. So that's so I'm trying to bring back that kind of it's very
it's a very
some people will say it's auto, it's kind of a
e-renaissance.
I mean, yeah, exactly, right? Mm-hmm. Which is and the reason the voice sounds the way it does is because it's I talk about things that I think are important, but I don't. I make it a point to be as casual as possible. I think that combination is very rare. So normally people either are just having casual conversations about stuff that's not that important, or if they're having important conversations, it's like because they're authority figures, or from some institute or whatnot, so they have to be this very posh, very dramatic thing, and
Right.
that's not very inclusive. The reason they talk like that is actually, again, it's a historical vestige. It's like, because back then it's like you're in the king's court, and then you have to be like, oh, king, when they discover the planets, they have to name it after. They have to say things like, I remember I don't know if it's Galileo or someone. He's like, oh, Jupiter has 4 moons and Cosimo has 4 suns, and so like clearly this divine king is. You don't have to do that shit anymore, but people still do it. People still do a version of it because it's just old habits die hard, I guess. Appeal to authority and stuff like that. But we don't have to do it. People don't realize that like a lot of again, it's like the Hendrix thing again. It's like, I feel like we have all been given acoustic guitar, electric guitars, and everyone's still playing like
brilliantly said, my friend. That blows my mind. Before you finish the sentence, no, that's brilliantly said. Tell me if this works, because I am not you, and therefore I do not have all the information on you. But I think, because I've been thinking, I was like, would I describe Visa and would I say he's like the perfect online common person? Like, you are not, like you said, you're not coming from a place of authority. You're not. But I think one way to describe it is, how Jordan Peterson got very famous in 2017, and he almost like reignited the concept of Jungian archetypes, and suddenly everybody believes in archetypes like they're their horoscopes, right? I feel like you are not living a story. I think you are very authentically, and I may be wrong, but you are not. Everybody's trying to live out a story, right? And you'd find a bunch of these dudes picking up king, magician, lover, joker, something like there is all these archetypes that people ascribe to. They get it from the media architecture of things. They get it from Hollywood and Bollywood and all those kind of things. I think you are, in some sense, at least on Twitter, not trying to live out a story. I think it is so undeniably authentic what you're doing that it relates. And it's not just relate. Sometimes I'll see people tweeting at you, and it'll be like, it is so amazing to have spoken, or like, it is so amazing to have come in touch with something about, and it's like that conversation that is happening feels real. Like, it does not feel like, oh, glad to make acquaintances. It almost really just like feels real. So would you say there is any merit to this theoretical concept that Visa is not trying to live out a story, or is Visa trying to live out a story?
I'm not sure. Sounds like this. It sounds plausible. So I don't have a specific archetype in mind. I mean, I try to look to people for inspiration, but I have like a lot of different people that I admire who, so I'm always curious about people who brought things into the world that didn't exist before, like kind of just whether it's, inventing a country even, so like Nehru and Gandhi and Sun Yat-sen and Lee Kuan Yew, like, again, like, there was no country before, and then you imagine a country and you make that happen. Like, I'm interested in that. I'm just trying to get as many interesting people together as possible. I think so. Once in a while, I will run into somebody who doesn't like me, and usually I understand why. It's because they see.
Why? I'm curious.
Usually because they think I'm a narcissist. Usually they think they think I'm trying to build an audience to kind of glorify myself. I don't think that's true, and I've agonized about it myself. I've sat alone and I'm like, oh, am I just doing this like for the likes or whatever? But like, so if you see what I did on Twitter today, the thing I did was I asked. So I have about 20,000 followers, which is more than most people have. Most people maybe have a few hundred, but it's not like celebrity. Celebrities have millions of followers, right? I have 20,000. It's not crazy, but it's pretty substantial. And so what I did is I asked the people today, okay, what cities are you guys from? Like, tell me, reply to this tweet with what city you're in, and I'll put it in a list. And then when any of my friends is traveling, they can be like, hey, I'm going to New York, or I'm going to DC. Who's there? And I can be like, hey, see, I have this list here, and you can meet up with that person who's also interested in the kind of stuff I talk about. So now it's like I'm providing a public service in a way, right? I'm helping people connect with other people, and I'm doing it for the selfish thing is I want to see what they come up with. Right. I want to be a frame I've recently used is I kind of want to be the Quincy Jones of Friendly Ambitious Nerds. And Quincy Jones is everywhere. It's like if you look at musical history, he was there with Frank Sinatra, he was there with Michael Jackson, he was Miles Davis. Like wherever there were successful people, he was involved in some way. It's kind of creepy. He discovered Oprah. It's like insane. But like, he Was he doing it to glorify himself? I don't think so. I think he loved music and he wanted to see the best possible musicians flourish in the best possible way. And everyone who works with him loves him. He's this grand personality.
Right.
But yeah, so I